Okay, Mr. Chair, if you could kick off the meeting, please.
Okay, we're going to start this meeting on the 21st of January. And Frank, you have the agenda, so go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So just a couple housekeeping items before we get the meeting started. So as proposed from the last time we met back in, I think November, maybe December, this was going to be the last meeting with policy directions. So, and if we can, obviously that's a caveat there, then we will schedule a final meeting, hopefully next week. And I know the chair would like to see that in the evening. That would be the final submission to the Planning Commission from page 1 to whatever the last page is. So that is what is at least we're trying to shoot for. Just some updated data from a couple days ago. We have 217 active permits, 99 that are pending, and what we're seeing on average over the last month is about seven new applications per week. So I've asked the chair, and as everybody knows, in prior meetings, it's been a kind of a workshop type format meeting. There's been open dialogue both from the public and the committee. However, just trying to get through this very important meeting to get policy directions, I asked the chair to, we're going to have a period of time for public comment, which we should and need to, but that will be the only time that we would have that. And Mr. Chair, maybe at an appropriate time, whenever you feel that we should have public comment, then we'll talk a little bit more about that. From a staff perspective, there is not a right or wrong policy direction. It's just policy. Once staff has policy, then it is then incumbent on us to deploy that policy. So we're looking for forward to this direction, and just so you're aware, by the end of this meeting, your policy could be broad. Staff, staff, and then the other committees in front of you, which are Planning Commission and Council, we could work on the details if it is still left outstanding. So don't feel that you have to go through every nuance. It could be broad, like as an example. We recommend a cap. We recommend density restrictions. You definitely can go into the nuance, absolutely. But if you run out of time, just for purposes of giving direction, it can be broad like that, just so you're aware. Or you could have future meetings, again, just so you're aware. Then finally, this is, this topic today has been the elephant in the room probably from day one. So there's been a lot of good discussions from the committee and the public. So I think the committee is well versed of the issues. As we all know, Cindy is very passionate about this topic. So she has kind of worked on, and that's what's in front of you on your screen right now, some proposals, because the committee has said in prior meetings that you would like to have the discussion. You didn't say that you would do it, but you said you want to have the discussion on caps and density. So, with that, Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy for her proposals. And again, Mr. Chair, I'll leave it up to you for when you feel the appropriate time is for public comment, but we do need public comment.
Okay, that's fine. Just to let you know, for next week, the only days I have will be Monday and Tuesday at night. I'm going to Texas to see my granddaughter graduate the Air Force boot camp. So that's, I'm leaving Wednesday. So I'll be gone Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week. So if we want to have this, start thinking about, look at calendars, it'd have to be Monday or Tuesday night. But we can do it the week after. I'm free. I mean, I'm not going anywhere after that. So, but next week is, I'm gone 3 days. So just so everybody is aware, just start looking at calendars, and then Cindy, you go ahead.
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Something that I had discussed with Frank, and I think it's probably a good idea, is to, rather than going into detail on each proposal, put forward the general proposal, and then we can do an up and down vote as to whether or not we want to have further discussion on that proposal at all. If everybody's agreed to that, then we can go down them one by one in that respect. Does that sound like a plan?
You talk about the paper that you sent out?
Yeah. Yes, yes. Does that sound like a good plan to everybody? That way we don't have to go into detail on a proposal we're not even going to consider.
Correct. Does everybody have a copy of it, or did
It's on
everybody?
the screen.
Well, I know, but you can only see one at a, yeah, I guess we can do one at a time. Okay. Well,
So-
doing one at a time is fine with me. If we're not gonna.
So do we-
We already discussed this part, about limiting it to 2 people, that we weren't gonna do that, but.
Well, I think, I'm not sure. We never talked about 2 people. We talked about 1. So let's just do a vote. Do we want to discuss the idea of limiting permits in general to per person? Is that
Okay.
a yes or no? How are we going to vote on that?
Well, everyone will have to chime in, I guess. So,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair, I could take a roll call vote on these, just because
yeah, that would be the easiest, because we're never going to get through this if we try to all chime in. So.
All right, Cindy, did you want to talk about that at all, or you just want me to?
In general, let's just say, do we even want to talk about limiting permits per person?
Okay, so I'll just do a roll call on that. So the question is limiting, limiting permits quantity per entity. So the entity could be a person, could be a corporation, or whatever. So I'll do a roll call here. Cindy? Cindy?
Yes.
Chair Mintz?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Bilberry?
Yes.
Commissioner Kuchar?
No.
Committee member Fraser?
No.
Commissioner Walker?
No.
Then committee member Fowler?
No.
Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 no's and 2 yeses. So that proposal fails.
So let's scroll down to number 2. Do we want to talk about the idea of a cap? Then you would do a vote on that, Frank. Yes.
Well, so the committee in the past has said they want to talk about a cap in density. So, I mean, if you're proposing, the 7%, I think the number would be appropriate, more than just talking about it, because I think we've said the committee said they wanted to talk about it.
Okay, so we're already there. Yeah, and I should say the way that may I just make a couple of comments? One is that the comments from Travis that are on here, the notes that I took from the meeting the notes that I took from a meeting with Travis has reviewed and okayed. So he's seen everything that I'm submitting to you. That the way I envision these proposals are things that work in concert with each other towards a goal of balancing the issues that we're having with the clustering of SDVHRs in the neighborhood against the city needs for the income. So that's why there's a variety of different kinds of proposals. Also taking into account some of the comments
No, you
that
have an echo.
Also taking into account some of the comments that public participants have made, including STVHR owners and those that are not so interested in STVHRs, into rethinking how some of the proposals were framed. So that's why you're seeing some differences here, just to put that out. So are we talking about, so thoughts about caps, I guess. Is 7% a reasonable number? Do you think it should be higher? Do you think it should be lower?
But that's your proposal. So you want to a vote on it, and or there could be a counter motion on it.
Well, Frank, Jim Krushat here. I'm a little confused. Are we going to vote on a 7% cap on whether we want to, or are we going to vote on caps at all? Or am I voting on, do I believe that the cap should be at 7%? And I'll tell you my answer is no. And since we're not limiting people to the number of permits that they can have, then how can we put in a cap?
So yeah, the committee has already said they wanted to talk about it. So the proposal is, Cindy is in front of you, is 7%. So you could vote on the 7%. I would say that's a proposal that's out there, so we could vote on it, and or if there is any counter proposal to that. So I could start with a roll.
Well, Frank, either that, we could just vote on a cap, and then whether or not we want to have a cap. And then we could just present that to the planning commission as far as, and then work on the number. I don't know if we really have to come up with a number today, because it could change on either body. So really, if we just vote on the cap right now, then I think we could, because we can't, whatever cap we put in now, we're not going to, until it goes to the planning commission and the council, we're not going to have the percentage. So, I mean, I think we could just vote on the cap. Whether, do we want to suggest a cap, and then just go from there? Because by that time, all the figures will change. You know, we could be lower, or it could be higher. So I don't think we need to be stuck on a percentage right now.
I think that we could vote on a cap in general and then find out whether the committee wants to recommend a percentage to the planning commission. How about that?
Okay, Frank, let's take a vote on, we're gonna recommend a cap.
Okay, so this is no percentage, at least for this question. Just, do you want to cash cap, yes or no? Cindy?
Yes.
Councilmember Mintz?
Yes.
Councilmember Bilderant?
Yes.
Commissioner Krushat?
No.
Committee member Thornburg?
Yes.
Commissioner Walker?
Yes.
And committee member Fowler?
Yes.
Okay, so this passes 6-1. So yes on a cap.
Can we do a vote on 7%? And if 7% fails, then I would just recommend we take it to planning. But I think planning would recommend a higher cap, but let's just try 7, just see what happens.
Yeah, just so everybody's aware, right now, you know, we're at 5.1%, you know, currently, which, you know, obviously changes daily. And actually that 5.1 is based on 214, but we've actually got 217 now, so. Okay, so the question on the floor is, so yes has been given that you want a cap. So the question now is, do you want to establish it or recommend it at 7%? Cindy?
Yes.
Councilmember Mintz?
No.
Councilmember Bilderant?
This is not saying at 7, but start at a 7. We can work our way up, correct? If
Well,
need be.
if you give a recommendation, I mean, there's 2 more stops on the road, which is planning commission and council. So you know, it could change, but that's what the recommendation from the committee would be.
All right, yes.
Commissioner Krushat,
No to 7%.
Committee Member Thornburg,
No to 7%.
Commissioner Walker,
No to 7%.
and Committee Member Fowler.
I say yes to 7% as a starting point.
So what do I got? 1, 2, 3. I got 4 no's. So 7% fails, 4-3. So Mr. Chair, do you want? How do you want to proceed with that? The committee has said yes on percentage cap, but no on 7.
Well, it'd just be that recommendation to the planning commission, which is first, that the committee has agreed on a cap, the percentage to be determined. I mean, I could say it's, I know it's going to be some kind of number as far as what's going to come up. Somebody's going to come up with a number somewhere, or if they don't, I mean, it's still has to go through the committee. So I would just say we just leave it right there. That this committee agreed to that we should have a cap.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So we want to move on to item number 3. So just to clarify my comments earlier today in email format, what my intent of that email was only to state what the current situation is. With any of this, obviously it's going to take some technology and we'll continue to work with it, but just wanted to make sure the committee and the public is kind of aware. Airbnb is our biggest contributor to TOT, which is all lump sum. They don't give us, and it's voluntary. Right now, there's no state mandate to have social platforms remit TOT tax, but they have a voluntary program, which they have with a lot of cities. And I'm happy to say next council meeting, next Tuesday, VBRO is also doing the same, which is great. The problem is it's again lump sum. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. Yes, and I think it was a comment from one of the committee members back in November, I think it was, or public or someone that right now, or at that time anyway, our TOT submissions, you basically check the box only. You said, I submit my TOT through Airbnb, and there was no number. It was just checking a box. So we added that in November, which the current quarter, we'll be getting those in the current quarter, which is the end of January. So just want to let everybody know that. I mean, that's that is what the current situation is. With any of this, we have to figure out what the nuance, through the nuance, how to implement it. That's staff's job to figure it out. So I just wanted to, comment on that. And anyway, Cindy, if you want to talk about your proposal.
Yeah, the challenge has been that several of the owners have talked about the problem of inactive permits, or the problem of what if someone takes out a permit and we have density limits and they take out a permit just to prevent another STVHR from being next to them, but they never plan to operate the permit. So how does one deal with that? And especially if we have a cap, what system do we use to clear inactive permits? So my proposal was really only to try to address that challenge, and I based it on reported TOT. It's true that right now we're somewhat reliant on an honor system and STVHR owners self-reporting TOT on the current form. However, there are other ways of checking that income. For instance, people would have to report that income, I think, as a part of their business tax, or they would have to report income on their income tax return. So there are other places where income from STVHR would need to be reported. So this was just one idea of a system. But what I suggest that we do first, perhaps, instead of talking about the details of the system, is just simply maybe go to a vote on, do we agree that there needs to be some kind of system to deal with inactive permits that are still on the, I mean, I shouldn't call them inactive because that's really the confusing language. Permits that are still active but not being used for an extended period of time.
And from the manager's perspective, this is almost a necessity, especially if you have caps, right? Because you want to open it up. You want to have people having the availability to, use their property under the cap. And if there are inactives, it would suck up that cap number with inactives. So I think it's almost a necessity.
Should we go to a vote on this, just to the general conversation? I vote yes, obviously.
Okay. Councilmember Mitz?
Yes, I don't, this language, I'm not, it's gonna have to have some kind of language that we can deal with, but I do want to have some kind of language for inactive permits, yes.
And I think that's the question. Again, staff will be tasked after the policy is given to figure this out in some form or fashion. So yeah, and again, I think it's almost a necessity if you have a cap to do this. So
they hear you now?
So Councilmember Bilderrain?
Yes.
Commissioner Krushat?
First, I want to add something here. We voted on two things. First, we voted on whether or not we were going to limit a person or an entity's the number of permits they can have. And then we came down and said, okay, we're going to have a limit. So now we're going to limit the amount of economic opportunity a person has for a VHR, and we're going to allow one person or one entity to have as many VHR permits as they want. And so I'm coming back to, if we set a limit, which is fine, then I think we have to reintroduce the question of, okay, how many can one entity have? Just to be equitable across the board to people that want to take advantage of this opportunity. Then it gets back to then the question of, yeah, you're right. I don't want to see if a permit is inactive, and however we define that, then there has to be an avenue for which we can come back to the person and say, listen, you either use your permit or you don't. So yeah, I think we need an avenue for dealing with a permit that's inactive, but I also think that we need to go back and look at the number of permits we're going to issue to an entity or a person now that we've said we're going to set a limit. Is that clear?
Yes, I would agree with you, but maybe we should just finish this vote first and then go back. People agree.
So Commissioner Krushat, that was a yes, right? Is that correct, Commissioner Krushat?
Frank? Yeah, no, yes. Yes, that's correct, that we need to have an avenue for dealing with inactive permits.
Got it. Then we have Committee Member Thornburg.
Yes, and a couple of things really quick. For the people that would just pull them and not do anything, they are required to get a building permit. Those expire automatically at 6 months. And also host compliance can look and see if they're actively advertising, and I believe coming up with data if they are reserved or not, which might be a tool to reach out to them to check the frequency. But if they just obtain a permit and don't do anything, it would time out at the 6 months and then, potentially invalidate if we wanted to go there, unless they had a justification, a death in the family or sickness on why they weren't able to move forward.
Got it. Good point. Commissioner Walker?
Yes.
And Committee Member Fowler?
Yes.
Okay, so this one passes 7-0 on inactive. So, Mr. Chair, do you want to go back to, as Commissioner Krushat said, to kind of look at limits per entity?
Limits per entity. I thought we voted no on that.
We did. You know, his comment was that, you know, maybe since we're saying yes in caps, that we need to, you know, and we're going to, you know, yes on caps, that we should go back and look at limits just to make it a variety, I guess, of people. In theory, I think his comment is if there is a percentage, and let's say that percentage is 500 in total, in theory, one person could have 300 of that 500. I think that's where he's going.
Oh. Is that what you're talking about, Jim? You want to say you want to revisit the limitations to the number?
Yeah, no. Yes,
Should we
well,
just
what I'm saying is I think we need to now that if we agree that we're going to set a limit within the city of 29 Palms and whatever that may be, then I think we have to go back and sit there and say, okay, one person or one entity, you're allowed 2 VHR permits per entity. Now, if somebody wants to turn around and go out and set up 6 or 7 different LLCs, well, yeah, you can't stop that. But
Well, actually, you would be able to see that.
I think we need to come back to that limit. Talking, I think we need to sit, because what we're saying is there is a limited number of permits. That's a limited number of economic opportunity for people, and I think we need to be equitable. Therefore, I think we should set. If we go with the limit, then we have to go back. If we go with the cap, then we have to go back and look at the limiting how many we give per entity.
I second Jim's suggestion. Should we have a vote on whether we're going to go back to it?
Well, if there's a motion and a second on the floor, then, you know, that, you know, we've got to vote on it.
Okay, well, let's vote on it. Well, all we're going to do is go back and revisit, I guess, number 1 on the, we've gone from 3 to 1 back. Okay.
Yeah, so is the motion 2 or just a limit? Then, again, similar to the cap situation, do you just want a limit, or is the motion 2?
My second would be.
I think that.
Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
I think that we need to go back and go ahead. I'm just saying that we need to go back and have a limit on the number of permits per entity or per person. Whether that's 2 or 3, I can't say.
Okay, so the motion is just a limit, not a quantity, at least at this point.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Frank, this is Eli. I have a question from the public. Do you want me to ask that now, or do you want to wait till a period opens up?
Well, you know, Mr. Chair, you know, it's up to you when you want to have public comment.
Well, on what, Eli, what is the matter?
It's to the issue you're speaking about right now, the cap and the limit per permittee. So that's why I asked.
It's on this specific one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Tell them to have, 3 minutes.
Well, I'll just read you his questions from Jonathan Hume. He says, what if someone currently has 4 permits? Would they be grandfathered in, or would they be forced to divest any over the cap?
Yeah, so that will be a question, that the council will have to answer. If there is a, non-conforming use, it's going to be a property right issue that the council is going to have to deal with. So the committee can't answer that question today, unfortunately.
Okay. So let's go back to, so Jim wants, and we're going to go back and vote on whether or not we can have, we're not going to vote on a number. We're just going to vote on, do we want to limit the number of permits? Is that correct, Jim?
If we go with the cap, then we limit the number of permits per individual or entity.
Okay. Well, I think the cap is pretty solid. So let's,
Okay.
so you're okay to go back and vote whether or not we want to put on the limited number for each person.
May I make a comment? Just quickly, the reason I said as defined by financial interest is that solves the LLC issue of people going and doing all the different LLCs, because according to Travis, they do ownership and they also get all the owners in the LLC. So everybody has to sign off so they can see LLC ownership.
Okay. So, all right, so let's, so Jim, that's basically your motion though, is that we want to limit the number of persons or entities that can own vacation rentals, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead,
And if we
Frank.
say person, then that means going back there. But let's just say we're going to limit the number of permits per entity or per
Okay,
person.
okay.
Okay, I'll go through roll call. Cindy?
Yes.
Councilmember Mintz?
Yes,
Yes.
Councilmember Cruciat, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Cruciat?
Yes.
Committee member Thornburg?
No.
Commissioner Walker?
Yes, I don't think two's the number, but yes.
And committee member Fowler?
Yeah, based on Jim's rationale, I agree. Yes, we should probably revisit that. And again, I don't know that two's the number, but I do think that's something that's pertinent now.
Okay, so that wins 6-1. To have a cap does, again, similar to, the cap number. Does the committee want to kind of throw out a number, or you just want to kind of punt that to the planning commission and the council to kind of figure out what the quantity number is?
I think what staff can give at least a report on how many we have now, how many each one has, so that we kind of got an idea of where it's people own one and one company owns 5. That way we got an idea of where it's at. If I think we can just leave it to them.
May I make a recommendation though, that it not be based on per entity period, that it be based on per entity as defined by financial interest? Otherwise, people can get 5%, people can switch percentages around and put them under other people's names and, all these LLCs. And if you define it by financial interest, it's very clear, as opposed to this sort of muddiness that can happen in general.
Yeah, the only from a staff perspective, the only problem with that, and I don't know if we have any out there, quite frankly, but there may. So Nevada and Delaware, they do not disclose the financial interest. So they're blind. They're blind to the ownership within those 2 states. So.
But we're not. I mean, as if you look at the notes from Travis, we see all of that.
Not in those 2 states. Not in those 2 states. You can't. You don't disclose in Nevada and in Delaware. That's why a lot of people incorporate in Nevada and Delaware, so you don't. So it's blind. So
you're
anyway.
saying if an owner in 29 Palms happens to live in Nevada and Delaware, they'd be able to own as many as they want because it would be blind? Because, here that's not the problem, because Travis already collects that information as a part of the permit process in 29 Palms.
So you can incorporate in those states, and it's not disclosable. It's a blind corporation in Nevada and in Delaware. Now, I'm just making that statement. Now, the committee, can, and the council and others could try to pierce that, and ask for that voluntary information or mandate that information. But you can't get that information in Nevada nor in Delaware.
Well, limited liability companies is the only kind of entity that's allowed under the way that I wrote this. You cannot be a corporation and have an Stdhr permit, like a corporation other than a limited liability company, the way this was written. And you should not, I would really recommend that corporations not be allowed to have them, because that's not what's intended by the law. I think it's individuals.
Yeah. So again, I just want to make that statement. I mean, we could, no reason to get into the weeds on this. So,
yeah.
So I got direction, and the committee is what I'm hearing anyway, does not want to delve into recommending, at least at this point, a number. But what we will do, staff will do, is bring back maybe the next committee meeting for information on the amount of entities that we have that are out there that have, I guess, disclosed similar ownership, meaning Johnny LLC, Vacation Home Rental LLC, has Frank Lucchino and Danny Mintz, as an example, ownership. But then they also have, short-term rentals, or for us, LLC, but also the same two, Frank Lucchino and Danny Mintz, own that. What the committee wants to see, at least what I'm hearing, is you want to see those owners and not the LLC.
Yes, it would be based on ownership, financial interest.
Is that what the committee is looking for?
Yeah, I thought we weren't going to dive into all that till I thought we were just voting on the whether or not we're going to make a limit on it.
Well, but that's an important one, actually. Maybe not percentage. The committee, other people can figure out the committees, but is it entity or is it ownership?
In other words, the challenge is that you could have a 50% ownership husband and wife. That would give them 2 permits, because the wife would take ownership on, take out the permit in her name on one, and the husband would take out permit name on the other. But in fact, they both own both of them, for instance. So if you do financial interest, it says basically you can only have financial interest in whatever number it is we designate, in 3. You can only have financial interest in 3, or financial interest in 4, or financial interest in 1, whatever that number is. That's all I'm saying. Otherwise, people can get around it very easily.
Well, if it's possible to get around it, they'll get around it. But we could start with financial interest. If that's the way, I mean, it sounds like there's all kinds of different ways right now.
Yeah. The financial interest clause comes from the Palm Springs ordinance. That's where I got it. FYI.
So is that the will of the committee, or is this something you want to kind of, for lack of a better word, punt until the planning commission, or do you want to, make a recommendation on it? There is kind of, I think, a recommendation on the floor on it. I just want to be clear on it.
Well, maybe the way to do it is just to ask for a second and do a vote, just to get it off the table. How about that?
So there's a recommendation on the floor of ownership, not entity, of ownership limits. Is there a second on that?
Oh, we voted on that.
Well, it's the two questions. Is it entity or is it individuals? And again, the committee could punt that to, the planning commission and council to figure out, or you can make a recommendation. Do you want it to be entity, meaning, if your Vacation Rentals Are Us LLC, that's your limit, or it's Johnny Smith can only have 3 ownerships, because Johnny Smith may own different LLCs and names, right? So, that's what's on the floor.
Frank, I hear what's on the floor. I just, my feeling is that I kind of like to punt that back over to staff to sit there and say, how hard is it to track the financial interest between LLCs? Like you said, if somebody incorporates their LLC in Nevada, and that Nevada corporation buys a house in 29 Palms and goes out for a VHR, we can't track who. Danny's right. If they want to get around it, they'll get around it.
Of course.
So I'd like to punt that over to city staff, just because I'd like to get more information on what can and cannot be done.
If you read what I wrote, it says, per 1/12/22 discussion with Community Development Director Travis, all owners must sign on permits and LLCs must submit articles listing owners, so the cross-checking for financial interest is in the documents currently collected in the permitting process. So yes, you can go back to staff, but the Community Development Director has already said that is already.
I know, I see that. I see that, Cindy, and I'd still like to pass that back over to our community development director and have him take a look at it.
Yeah, and you know,
I got it. I understand.
Yeah, and you didn't go into the detail. I'm just bringing up information. And again,
Okay.
Nevada and Delaware, that's why people do it, to kind of protect their individual. So the articles of incorporation is not going to have the ownership there. So anyway, that's just a problem that we can kind of figure out. Maybe you restrict and say you can't have those in those states, or we may, I don't know what the man, you know, what.
Anybody want to second Cindy's motion? If not, we can move on.
Yes, that's a good idea. If there's no seconds, we should move on. Okay, let's just move on.
Hearing none, let's move on.
Okay. So again, that will be that'll be pushed on to the Planning Commission and the council to figure out. Right now, it's only a limit per, and they will figure out what the per is. Okay, got it. Okay.
So we're going down to 4 maybe now. Is that where we are on this list?
Yes, Eli, if you could scroll down, please.
Yes, we're on number 4.
Yeah, this is similar. This was similar to 3. Again, allowing permits to suspend, but this is again maybe just something, if we're kicking 3 back to staff, maybe this should also be kicked back to staff to figure out as well.
Yeah, I think you know, that's more procedure. I mean, if you're suspended, you know, I think we could work through that. If you're suspended, you shouldn't be part of the cap, right? You know, you shouldn't take up a space, you know, within it. So I think that is somewhat explanatory or reasonable, I should say, that within a new ordinance. So that's something that the Planning Commission can deal with from the staff's perspective.
Okay, so then we're on to number 5, which is a more complicated discussion. Is it Eli? Can you scroll? So there's 2 parts to 5. Basically, both of them are ideas for dealing with density. And there are 2 different ideas for dealing with density. Personally, after my conversation with Travis, I kind of feel that the first option, if we want to deal with density, would be the best. But perhaps before we get into anything, we should have a vote on whether or not we want to consider density restrictions. Right?
Well, that's a good idea because we've already said we want to do the cap. So I guess let's take a vote. Do we want to do density?
Okay, so this is just a generic density question, no details, just a generic density question. So I'll go through the roll call. Cindy?
Yes.
Councilmember Mintz?
No.
Member Bilderrain?
Yes.
Commissioner Krushat?
No, if we have caps, then we can't be tracking densities.
Committee member Thornburg?
No.
Commissioner Walker?
I'm gonna have to say no.
And committee member Fowler?
Yes.
You went down.
3, 4. So there's 4 no's. So no density.
This can be brought back before council, right?
Well, yeah, Planning Commission and council. So next step in the process is commission. And so yes, each one of those entities could make changes.
Okay, so then let's scroll down to whatever the next thing is. Okay, this just had, it's not really caps and density, it just had to do with, there was currently nothing in the ordinances that had to do with any kind of safety inspections on renewals. And so this was just a general idea that at some point down the line, once someone has a permit, at some point, perhaps there should be an inspection to ensure that the conditions at the point when the permit was issued were still enforced. That's all. And then we can do a general vote as to whether or not it's something we want to discuss.
So, I just reviewed the draft ordinance and with changes. And what's in there right now, at least what I heard from the committee, was a renewal and inspection every, I put in there 2 years. So it's actually in the draft one currently.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, I didn't see it.
I had 2 years, but I mean,
Two may be too, according to Travis, 2 may be too frequent, but why don't you guys, you can go ahead and deal, I would say bounce it over to planning and to Travis and not something we have to do.
yeah, so it's already in the draft.
Okay. Then what was the next one? It's changing the notice of STVHR permit application notification to a broader perimeter.
Yeah, so right now, just so everybody's aware, so state law, the minimum is 300 feet, which we do. So I think what the proposal is to, expand the minimum to 1,000 feet.
300 feet is tough. Wait a second. 300 feet is tough because if you're living 2.5 acres or 5 acres, you're not going to know if the house next to you is. I'm not sure if that's true or not. If it's based on border, it's not going to notify enough residences around the permit in certain instances. That's all. So can we make a voice vote about whether or not we even want to discuss it? I think Commissioner Cruchat said no already, but I would say yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a roll call because I think it'll be just too confusing. So Cindy, yes, you said Councilmember Mintz?
No.
Councilmember Bilderain?
Yes.
Commissioner Cruchat?
No.
Committee member Thornburg?
No.
Commissioner Walker?
Yes to discussing it.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
And committee member Fowler?
Yes.
Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3. I got 4 yeses for notifications of 1,000 feet.
Well, for discussion, I think is what Max said. He wants to discuss it.
I wanted to talk about it more. Maybe 1,000 feet for the 2.5 acres and larger, maybe. But if it's less than that, I think we can leave it at the 300 or maybe bump it up to 5. But for the larger parcels, it should be a larger distance, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think the problem is, Max, when I talk to Travis, with regards to, say, that density limit, it's hard. There's no way within the system to reasonably base anything on lot sizes here. It's really, really hard, he said. And so that's why, I mean, because originally I had it tiered like that. If you scroll up, Eli, you can see that I crossed off all of those tiers under 3, right there. And that's because Travis said there's no way to do it.
If city staff can't do it, then I'll change mine to a no, because it doesn't make sense.
What if we just take it to a different number, not 300 feet, but 500 feet? But 300 feet doesn't really notify people. If
300 feet notifies a lot of people in most of the cases.
But it doesn't notify if you are on a larger lot.
On that large lot.
Yeah, but the thing with the larger lot is you're not affecting many people because you have the larger lots.
Well, it affects enough people. What if we just said 500 then? Just something a little larger than 3. People aren't getting notified and they're not happy about it.
Why don't we stick with? I'm happy with state law.
Well, okay.
If city staff can't do it by parcel size, then I change mine to a no.
Okay. So that flips it to 4 to 3 no then. Okay. And Chair Mintz, there are other questions, coming from the public. You want to hit the last one and just open it up for public comment, or do you want to take them now?
Let's do 8 and then we can open up.
Okay.
But the last one was only just that permits shouldn't be transferable, that the permits are attached to the person or entity permit, not attached to the lot. So they shouldn't be transferable.
And they're currently not transferable. Is it
Is
just
that
re-emphasizing
I
that?
wasn't sure.
Yeah, they're not transferable.
Yeah, there is, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that's,
Then let's leave it alone. There's no reason to go farther with that.
So Mr. Chair, do you want to open up for public comment now?
yes, that's fine.
If any members of the public audience would like to comment, please raise your virtual hand and I will call on you one by one. Alternatively, if you do not wish to speak, you can type in your questions and I will read them into the record. Frank, do you want me to read in the previous comments that were made during the discussion into the record?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay. So let me expand this here.
Eli, it sounds like you're feeling better. Your voice is not as cracky as it was the other day.
Yeah, I am feeling better. Thank you. Okay,
Good.
so the last comment we made on the record, I'm just going to read through the list here. So we had the sorting got messed up here. We had a comment from Luis Marler that said, go Cindy. I think Cindy has a very important point. It needs to be defined by financial entity to keep out the corporates. And then we had the comments from Jonathan Hume about enforcement difficult or impossible and evasion opportunities are ripe for abuse. Also, Palm Springs ordinance is too new to determine whether it will withstand legal challenges. And let me go back to the general audience campaign here and see if we have anybody ready with their hand raised. And we have two people. I'm going to let Jonathan Hume speak. Jonathan Hume, you're now unmuted. Just unmute yourself and you'll be able to speak directly to the committee with 3 minutes. We're not hearing you, Jonathan.
Does he need to unmute?
It showed him as unmuted, but he just dropped off. So I'll move on to the next person, Luis Marler. You are now unmuted. Please unmute yourself and speak to the committee. They're still showing her as self-muted.
Hi, you read my comment, and I do believe the density of the permits is ridiculous because now we don't have a community of stable neighbors. We have people who come and go and do not care about each other in the same manner. I'm invested in this and I do not want corporate neighbors. The minute I discovered a New Yorker who crunched the numbers and came here and bought 5 buildings, I have been disturbed by that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I'll move back to the questions pane. We have a question from Susan Peplau. The name right. Cap limits and personal interest. There are many in the community who have built mixed-use properties which toggle between long-term and short-term. So limiting those folks is doing a disservice to the community and the ultimate goal of the community. And that is, let me see if there's any other hands raised. I do not see any other hands raised. If anyone else in the public wishes to speak, please raise your virtual hand or enter your question, and I will read into the record. Looks like Louise Marler raised her hand again. I'm not sure, but I'll unmute her. She still had a minute and 36 left in the 3-minute period. Louise, you're unmuted if you wish to speak again.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I clear the hand. I have another question from Bruce Edelson. Is there a limit or density consideration for other types of businesses?
Like any other commercial businesses? No.
We don't have a density restriction for liquor stores or anything like that. They can build as many as they want.
Well, that's regulated by the state, how many each community can have.
Yeah, so there is a limit on ABC. However, it goes to the Planning Commission to give them, authorize a letter of necessity and convenience to add more within the census tract area.
Let me look through the list again. I do not see any other hands raised. Or let me see if there's an outstanding question. If you can enter another question here. It seems unfair is Bruce Edelson's response to that. It's right into the record.
With the cap and with it going by person, I don't know if we're going to have a rush of corporate entities to be able to do that. But if, the potential for everybody to be out there, if we're going to cap it and we're going to lose potential for having the homes not brought up to current standards, the upgrades that we've seen throughout the city from the VHRs have been nice. But if there was something that we were able to look at rather than capping as a person, if you want to come in and invest money in the community, maybe you can only have 2 active permits at a time, and then you go down to the bottom of the list rather than us denying that money. In my time there, I never saw a big jump in corporate entities coming in. We saw people leaving New York and other states buying properties. But I just can't wrap my head around you telling me that I can only buy 2 houses and I can only utilize this for 2 houses. So, and maybe another method to not have somebody come in and here, I'm going to do the next 180 permits, buy 180 houses, but 2 permits from start to finish, then they start all over again with whatever the next newest would be. Just something other than that. I have a hard time wrapping my head around the financial interest or the people.
I have 2 other questions from the public.
Jim?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment. I understand what Mr. Thornburg's saying. My point is we either let the market run it, which means no caps and no number on how many entities or how many permits an entity can have. But the minute we step in and we sit there and say, okay, we're going to limit, where the government's walking in and they're affecting the resourcing, production, and distribution of an economic entity, then that walks us into a different neighborhood, Jim.
Yeah, I see where you're going, but I'll agree to disagree with you on that.
Okay.
And I would also say that within the limit, you go, Mr. Mintz, Councilman Member Mintz.
Thank you. Part of our problem obviously is our housing shortage. If we had overabundance of houses for everyone, then we probably wouldn't even have to have that kind of discussion. But at this time, obviously we're having a rental. We're trying to solve. We're bringing more people are building things, but right now we're also looking at a rental type situation. So, it's I agree with both sides of that. You're right. I don't like as little government involvement as with in capitalism is sometimes is good, but sometimes you just gotta have some kind of guidelines. So
Yeah, and it was funny that one of the public brought up the person in New York with the 5 properties, because I actually heard that as a part of another meeting. So, you know, people are coming in from elsewhere, buying multiple properties, flipping them immediately into STVHRs. And also the property immediately behind me that was suspended as a STVHR was immediately rented to 3 Marines long-term. So there's an example of one that flipped right over from a potential STVHR into a long-term rental. And I think we do need those long-term rentals here. And it's not the only cause of, obviously, the housing crisis, but it is a partial cause of a housing crisis.
We continue with the public comment. Bruce Edelson again. Can the legality of such limits be challenged? Do we believe that if an entity is not breaking any other laws, noise, etc., that people should be protected from the market? Then we have additional comments from Jonathan Hume. People aren't going to renovate the houses if it's unlikely when they're done that they will be able to get an SDR permit. And then we have additional question or another comment from him. It introduces a huge risk to anyone renovating a property. Then if I continue on, we had Kurt Kepler. I'm a VHR owner and support overall caps, but oppose density limits. Density limits are a one-size-fits-all approach that would distort property values. A person with a home next to an existing VHR would never be able to create a VHR. Let's scroll further. We have Michelle Bolter. We are husband and wife owners and currently have 4 STRs and 29 Palms. We also live in 29 Palms. We are also currently an S Corp. We are not a large corporation. Will we have to redo our corporation to an LLC?
Yeah, there's been no direction on that. You know, changing only, you know, excluding corporations. That's not a recommendation.
Okay, then we have additional comments from Susan Peplow. Let me find Peplow, I'm sorry. Let me find them here. Sorry, we're getting quite a few comments in the chat here, so I'm just looking through them. Come on, Susan. Oh, goodness. Okay, we have good point, Councilman Mintz, in response to what you were saying on her last question. If you're going to force a property owner to choose the use of between VHR or long-term, what would happen? Allow owners to use the property as the market requires, short-term, long-term personal use. The data reflects that we do not have a rush of corporations. Seems like a lot of discussion to combat a problem that doesn't apply. The bulk of multi-permit holders are basically Morongo Basin community members. Let me clear these so I can see if there's any new comments. And move through them here. We have another comment from Bruce Edelson. San Francisco and New York have rental shortages. Do we believe the government must supply solutions but not limit the market? And Bruce Edelson added additional comment that he lives here and am a person only. And well, I still show 4 outstanding questions. Let me see if I've already read some of them into the record here. 3 outstanding. Okay, clear that.
Mr. Chair, as Eli's looking for him, after he finds these next two, do you want to close the public comment period? And I don't know if there's any more business that the committee needs to take, but do you want to close it after these couple comments?
Yeah, we can, well, let's go to, it's 8 after, let's go to 12:15 on public comment, and then we'll close it after that. That way, if somebody's listening to that, if you do want to make a comment, just put it in the queue and we'll get to it. If it's there, we'll still answer it, or your comment will be recorded.
So I've cleared all questions. I have 0 hands raised. If anyone else wishes to comment or speak directly, please raise a virtual hand or enter your question now. We currently have 18 public participants, just for the record.
How many are on there, Eli? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We had 18. One just dropped off. We're now at 17 attendees from the public currently.
Okay, that's not including us, right?
No, that's not including you. There's 10 panelists currently participating.
18, that's pretty good. That's probably as many as came to the last meeting.
We've had a series of questions, for multiple participants. So.
Yeah. Oh, I got you. Yeah.
I see still 0 questions and 0 hands raised currently.
Okay, while we're waiting for since I said 12:15, I guess we'll go to 12:15. Does anybody on the committee want to make a general comment while we're waiting?
I think with regard to corporate entities, I mean, and with regard to some of these regulations, I think that 29 Palms is just trying to be proactive so that we don't get ourselves in the situation that's happening with some of our neighboring communities. So whether or not corporate entities have come in here yet isn't, to me, the point. The point is, what is it we want to happen in the future? Because we're still getting 7 permits a week. That's 7 permits a week, that's 28 a month. I mean, that's actually quite a lot of permits still coming in, so
something if staff could look into, or I know Cindy, you've been great at doing research, but with any jurisdiction that has put caps, is there an issue of corporations coming in to desirable locations? We're looking at this with foresight, but has anybody else experienced a problem to where we need to do the Chicken Little, the sky is falling?
my understanding actually is that there is corporate interest in the ownership of STVHRs and in owning multiple STVHRs. I don't have the research in front of me, but there's a lot of anecdotal information from other cities that are wide open, which is one of the reasons that people are placing limits and caps.
So Jim, what I could do is ask that question to our cities around the state of California, see if I get any responses. The question is, those who have caps, did you see a result of an influx of corporations coming in to kind of fill up that cap space?
Correct.
Okay.
I have another public comment or question. At the current rate of new permit applications, how long would it take to reach a 7% cap or a 10% cap? From Jonathan Hume.
Well, just for, let's see here. Let me just do some. So we're at, let me see, 5,900. And if we do 7%, 7% would be 413. So, we're at, what are we at? 217 plus 99. So that's 315, assuming all the pendings go through. That's 315. So that leaves 100 still available. Again, at the 7, right now anyway, the 7 per week clip. So basically that's 100. So 7 times, what is that? 8, 9, 10, 70. So it's about 15 weeks, 35, about 15 weeks roughly, based on the current clip. Now, what that's not taken into effect is people dropping out, which we know there are. But based on just the 7 a week and no dropouts, that's 15 weeks in theory, approximately.
I mean, this is a good reason for why we're not setting a cap right now, because obviously, it's going to take probably a few months before this even reaches council, right? I don't know what the timeline is right now. But it seems like a 7% cap would be exceeded by the time it even gets to council, for instance. So, right?
Well,
what is
yeah,
the timeline
speculation.
at this point? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, so once after this meeting, once we get to the close, we'll try to figure out what the next day of this committee is, again, for the final perusal of what we're going to put forward to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission then thereafter would schedule a hearing on it. And, again, I don't know if it'll take 1, 2, 3, it depends. Hopefully, all the hard work that we have done, plus we have 2 commissioners on this committee, hopefully it gets through quickly. Once the committee or commission is done, then they will forward it on to the council. The council has to have a first and second reading of it. Then 30 days thereafter, it would go into law. So, there's still, some speculation of timing, but that's the pathway forward.
Okay, here's another public comment or question. How do you know when VHRs drop out? From Kurt Kepler.
Well, the obvious one is they sell, withdraw, they change. The other question is, which is one of the directions, is the inactive process of those who have a permit who don't use it. So that's 2 answers to that question. One we still got to figure out, and the other is they withdraw their permit for selling it, changing it, what have you.
Okay, we have another question from Jonathan Hume. Regarding any cap, if the concern is available housing, shouldn't the denominator be all housing units, including multifamily, not just single family homes, approximately 5,000 currently?
Well, the current policy is single family homes only, so VHRs aren't allowed in multifamilies.
And then we have another comment or question from Bruce Edelson. There is only so much growth the market can tolerate. Assuming a rate of 7 per week, the entire city would be Airbnb in a matter of years. Do we think that is going to happen?
Well, I'd have to say if we put a cap on this, then it couldn't happen. So, and hopefully that wouldn't happen. But if the council on the final says there's going to be a cap, then there's a cap. Not, then there's not.
All right, final call for questions or comments.
Okay. Nobody in the queue, Eli?
I have 0. I have 1 new question.
Okay. We'll go ahead and take
It's
that
a
one.
comment actually from Bruce Edelson. It says that is a tautological argument. Tautological. I'm not sure how to pronounce that word. I'm sorry.
Tautological.
There you go. The L is missing on the end, but it's there in the record now.
Okay.
Let me see. I have one other. Yeah, he just corrected it. So there's no other questions and there's no other hands raised to speak.
Okay. Well, I'm going to close the public hearing and public comment of this meeting. So I guess where we're going now is we need to figure out when we can meet at a nighttime meeting for the whole committee.
So Chair, you said you only have next week, Monday and Tuesday, is that right? Evening?
Right. We have Tuesday, we have a city council meeting, don't we?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, so you would only have Monday. And so, and I wouldn't be able to post it in time for Monday.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it would have to be, yeah,
Okay.
so it'd have to be the following.
All right. So everybody get your calendars out, please. Yeah, the week of February, you can do it.
How about Groundhog Day?
You're funny, Cindy. That'd be a great theme to this. So yeah, we could, Wednesday night's okay with me.
Well, so I have my city manager conference Wednesday and Thursday of that week of February.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I mean, the first, I mean, that works for, or at least for the manager's perspective.
Okay. Works for me. How about everybody else? Cindy, you good? Steve?
I'm good as of now.
Oh, fortunately, Eli just texted me and he's right. That is a planning commission meeting day.
Well, can't do that then.
Yeah, so how about the day before that?
Monday.
January 1st.
Yeah, so I'm good with that.
I'm good as of now.
February 1st?
No.
January 30th.
Monday, March 31st.
January.
I mean, January, March. I'm thinking softball right now, sorry. Yeah, January 31st. January 31st. How does that look on everybody's calendar? January 31st, Monday.
I'm good.
Jim's good.
Jim Cruciat, I'm good.
Okay. Steve? Cindy's good. Steve?
I'm good.
Okay. Max?
I'm good.
Travis?
I am good.
Okay, and both Jims already responded, right?
Yes, what time?
That's what we're gonna determine now. Should we do it at 6?
So the other question is virtual or live? The council, talked about this month, and it still would be January 31st being virtual. So is that the will of the committee as well?
Can we please do it live?
I prefer virtual. Or did the council give direction on a combo like live for the council, live for the committee, but virtual for public? I think we're still going to be in a peak.
Yeah, February. So the next council meeting in February or February 8th, the council wanted to go virtual, or not virtual, but hybrid.
Hybrid.
Yeah. So this is
January hybrid.
Yeah, could we do hybrid? And if Cindy, if you're not comfortable, you could just you could do it from virtual. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can we do it hybrid then? Eli, is that possible on January?
Are you talking about hybrid for the public as well, or just the committee members and have it open to the public? What are you talking about?
Just hybrid for the committee is what I'm interpreting. The public would, still only be able to access virtually. At least that's what I'm interpreting, unless that's not what the committee is.
Yeah, that's what I intended, Frank.
Well, Frank, since we have so many instant tests, what if we ask the public if they want to be there, they have to test. If they're negative, then they can come in. Is that legal? Can we do that? Can they take that self-test right outside the door? Like, if they're good, they can come in?
I'll have to, we haven't, we as a city have not gone there of mandating that. So I think others have done that, but I just have not asked that question. So I'll ask, I'll find out.
I thought if we all got shots, we were good. That's sarcasm, sorry.
Yeah, I got that, Steve. Well, I'm just looking at, I just want as many people to weigh in on this before it goes to the planning commission so that it can have, I guess, the planning commission will have, as much information and as much, just so they're not blindsided by something when they have to, have to spend a whole session talking about just one thing. So that's kind of why I wanted, doing this at night would be give everyone an opportunity to weigh in if they want to. But if we do it virtually, I guess it wouldn't matter. They can still do it. If we did the committee, hybrid committee showed up, because I prefer in-person meetings. These Zoom things are not my thing. So, but obviously we can do it, close it to the public. And do you think everybody in the committee, you think that would work? You think people would participate?
I mean, for some people, actually, especially people who are older, they prefer the virtual because they don't want to be in person right now. I mean, but I think it goes both ways. You know, some people don't have the bandwidth, so
Right.
it's a hard call.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's difficult, to be honest, to do the hybrid virtual broadcast with members in the chamber, committee members in from their house connecting, public in the chamber, public from their house. It's hard for me to show that and control all of that interaction communication. So I can do it. That's fine. However we want to work with. There may be hiccups as we've had in the past when we've done these kind of in-person, not in-person hybrid events through the platform. Platform's designed to do one thing, and that's to go all virtual. Blending them together, we end up with camera and audio issues interfacing the microphones.
Oh, well, I don't want to do that. I want to, this one went pretty smooth, Eli, so I'd rather do it where it's the smoothest operation, because you got people commenting, all the members were able to speak. So we could just do it virtual then, if everyone's agreed to that, then. Is everybody okay? I know, Max, I'm with you, but maybe it's maybe for this meeting, it'd be better we just go virtual.
Whatever's easiest and moves this down the road.
Okay, I'll second that. Okay, how about everybody else? You guys all good? Just do virtual on the 30th?
Thornburg's good.
Okay.
Travis is good.
All right. Steve, you good with that?
Yes.
You have that recorded? Yes. Okay, time, 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay, 6 o'clock. Is that a good time for everybody? Cindy gives the.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so,
Yes.
all right.
Yes.
So it sounds like 6 o'clock, January 31st, Monday, and that's going to be our final meeting for this to wrap this up, how it's going to go to the Planning Commission.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, just to kind of recap here, we got the 31st at 6 o'clock. It'll all be virtual. The committee has seen, and it's in this agenda packet, the ordinance as drafted with some of the changes that you've given thus far. What we will add for the meeting on the 31st is a section on inactive. I'm not sure where we'll put it, but the section on inactive, that kind of describes that. A section on caps. It'll be blank without a percentage, but it'll at least have a section on caps. And it will have, probably within the same section of cap, a limit on permits, not a quantity. The committee hasn't given a quantity, a limit on permits, and the committee hasn't given a recommendation on how it's limited, either by individual or entity. So that's still to be determined. I think I have two questions that I'll bring back as far as answers. How many corporations that we currently have out there in total, along with that question around the state of California of those who currently have caps, if there was an influx of corporations, and just a list, maybe I won't name names, but just how many duplicates that we do have out there and how many. I'll kind of put a little chart together for that.
Yeah, there's no reason to have the names. It's just, if you could just give us the numbers, that's all we need.
Okay.
Frank, with regard to the inactive, with regards to Susan's question about properties that flip back and forth between long-term rentals and short-term rentals, that idea about being able to suspend a permit might help with that situation. So if staff could also look at that in addition to inactive, that might be useful.
Yeah, again, staff is going to be about implementing this. So we're going to, I don't know if we'll have that answer by that 31st, but definitely we need to figure that out, because I think that is definitely part of this dialogue that we're having. Those who are not using it, suspending or inactive, needs to be out of the equation to allow people that want to use it. So yeah, so that's something we're going to have to delve into to figure out. So staff has directions.
The other big kind of bone of contention that I don't know how it's going to go to staff was the noise ordinance. And do we have any just suggestion that it goes to the staff to redraft a noise ordinance, or how is that going to work?
So right now within the policy, it just references that a VHR has to comply with the noise ordinance, but and light pollution. So both of them are referenced in the current policy, but there is no policy direction to redo them.
So we had brought up that the noise ordinance itself is really unenforceable as it stands, and there's nothing dealing with any daytime noise. So with the levels that have to be registered, and you need the decibel meter for any type of instance, which would mean that we would have to have somebody on call. So it's really not enforceable as it stands.
Yeah, and you just reminded me, we did have a complaint, and I know Mayor Mintz at that time got it as well. And I'm going to, kind of paraphrase off of memory. Part of the ordinance does even call out a disturbance is very broadly stated in there, just a disturbance by a neighbor. So it didn't even call out, a decimal reading. It basically was really broad, just kind of any noise would be a violation. And I know it was brought to Mayor Mintz at that time. So it may be something, definitely, thank you, Jim, for bringing that up, that I'll bring it up to Travis to maybe have the Planning Commission kind of, look at that noise ordinance for further refining, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. And something I'd seen a couple of times driving up and down Lear, it was brought up but not addressed, is open campfires. So they've got that like hip camp off of Lear near Amboy, but in the county area, they've had a couple of roaring fires that I've seen kind of going through. So I don't know if that's anything. I don't remember anything on the code for in the development code about fires, and I don't know how many. The more desolate places, I'm sure, have a lot of open fires, but with our winds and our stuff, maybe it's something that that should be addressed.
Yeah, some people, I think, some STVHR owners, because they don't want to see their own place burn down, I know have replaced their regular barbecues with propane because they just feel that's safer. I don't know if it factually is safer, but that's something I know that some owners have taken upon themselves, but it also could be something that could be regulated, I would imagine.
So Jim, I can't respond to that intelligently. So what I'll do is, let me bring that back on the 31st, and I'll inquire with staff if there's any restrictions on there. And the committee could obviously tweak the policy if needed, and or just kind of recommend something to the Planning Commission. So I'll bring it back on the 31st.
Yeah, because something like that, if we just limited it to a one of the fire pits that are caged, like that's what I have. I have one that it has a spark arrestor on the top of it, and I mean, instead of just an open pit fire. So, good comment, Jim.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? We got a time, we got a date, we got a place.
A virtual place.
I just want to make sure, this is Eli, and I just want to make sure, so I'm gonna send out an invite for the same panelists from this meeting.
Correct.
And that'll be on GoToWebinar, and it'll be on our Facebook page within an hour so people can register. And then the video for this meeting will be up within 2 hours on the city's YouTube channel, as well as the Civic Web in the agenda. So that's all we need to do, right? We're good?
Yeah, so just another comment, Travis, I think Travis Clark may be listening to this, but he just sent me a text, which is true, because last time when we talked about it, we had a rush. So, we're talking about caps, and the committee is recommending caps. There may be another rush of permits that coming through. So anyway, he wanted me to, make you aware of that, because that could happen, because people, going back to the non-conforming issue, because the non-conforming issue will only hit, until after it goes, through the process and finally to the council 30 days after a permit. So from now until then, in theory, people could rush to get permits that exceed, let's say 7% or whatever number that's out there. So anyway, just wanted to put that. I know he just sent that to me. Just want to make sure the committee is aware of that.
Well, this is the reason why one has a moratorium, so that you have a moratorium until something is enacted, and that controls the rush. But that was voted down, and if council wanted to consider a moratorium again, very short, because we are, we're pretty far along in the process now, so it wouldn't be for very long. I mean, I would just really recommend it.
Well, that's not really true. A moratorium caused a rush in Yucca Valley, and it caused a rush over here in Palm Springs, or in 29 Palms.
Yes, but we would be limiting the rush, because if the city council is meeting again in like a week and they bring it up at, they notice it and bring it up, it would be contained, as opposed to what's going to happen theoretically now, which is we've talked about the idea of caps, which may not come into force for 2 months at this point, right? Because of this timeline that Frank has mentioned. So it's just a thought. I mean, no matter what you do, there's going to be a rush. It's just how you choose to deal with it.
Okay. All right. Anybody else before I adjourn the meeting? Okay. Thank you all for taking the time for this, and I'll see you virtually on Monday, 31st. Have a good couple
Bye.
weeks. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, everybody. Stay safe.